This is Chill. It's episode 367 being recorded on the 30th of July, 2019. This is the raw version of the show with any errors left in, and they will be edited out for the podcast version, which will go out tomorrow. Dr. SWTOR is with me. He's on the road, and since everything's a little complicated already, we're not having any guests. It's just the two of us, and we're going to keep it simple today.
Yep.
All right. And let's see, let me make sure this stream's looking right. It's showing an ad for me right now. I'll also tweet out that we're going. So let me get that going too. Okay. TV. OotiniCast. Boom. Here we are. All right. Tweeted it out. We're all good to go. And Doc, are you all set then?
One more sentence.
Okay.
I'm not going to say a name or anything, but I put it in the show notes because it's like the number one thing on my mind. It's not related to SWTOR, but just like I'm going to say a nice "May the Force be with you" to my friend who's gone.
Okay. That's fine.
So
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Just let me know when you're ready.
yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. Going in 5. Hi, and welcome to the OotiniCast, the podcast that is training itself to let go of everything it fears to lose. This is episode 367 being recorded on Tuesday, July 30th, 2019. I'm your host, Chill, and with me is my co-host, Dr. SWTOR. No guests today. Dr. SWTOR is on the road. And how you doing, Doc?
I'm doing really great, Chill. How about you?
I'm good. So what you been up to, and why are you on the road? What's going on?
All right. Well, I'm on the road. I'm in Louisiana.
You sound a little quiet.
I'm quiet. Okay.
Can you get a little closer to the mic, maybe? I don't know.
I thought the mic was my headset. Hang on. Sorry, everyone. All right. How's that?
A little better.
A little better.
Did it change it to the mic on your headset?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what is picking me up.
Okay. Well, you sound clear enough. You're just a little quiet is all.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So what have I been up to in game? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, I've been trying to make progress on leveling up my gunslinger and my trooper
Okay.
because of the running out of time for the double XP and really wanting to capitalize on that to get all of my classes to 300. And so what I'm doing is I'm playing the gunslinger through the weeklies on the different planets, and then I'm using Operation Boss packs and packs that drop from the command crates on the trooper when the dark side is victorious. So there's our tip of the week. If you you have a tune that you want to try to get them to 300, but you don't want to actively play them as much, then you can certainly just spend your XP packs on that character and have them make some passive progress until you have time to actively work on them. And
That makes sense.
Yep, I'm fully deploying that strategy until the gunslinger makes it. And then I have no problem running the trooper through those planets too. It's just I don't have time to do every planet twice. So I've also been playing operations on veteran mode and I was able this past week to get a clear on Scum and Villainy, and my Thursday night team has progressed to working on Isaacs on veteran mode, and
Wow.
so that's a lot of fun. It doesn't appear too different from story mode. Just a lot of the guardrails are gone to relate it to bowling. That you have to kind of see things with your own eyes instead of the big blue and yellow things that Matt Pusevich put on the screen to make it more obvious in story mode. And of course, things hurt a whole lot more when you're not on the edge of your seat doing what you're supposed to be doing. And the last thing that I want to say, it's not so much about in-game, but it's just my life. I woke up this morning to some sad text messages from one of my professors that a very good friend of mine who was in my master's program with me and was actually teaching at that university passed away and has
Oh,
become one with the Force. So
yeah.
for a couple hours this morning before recording, I've just been trying to spread news of that and reflect on how important he was to me. And just to connect it back to Star Wars, it's not like I was his Padawan, but there were activities he ran at the school where he was very much like Yoda in the youngling training room. And so
Right.
that's kind of, beyond the friendship that we built over those years. It's like I lost my Yoda teacher this morning. So,
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear
uh,
that.
yeah, but death is a natural part of life, chill, and we should rejoice for those among us who become one with the Force. So, um, thank you everyone for allowing me the opportunity to just share that on air. It's been a huge part of my week that I was not expecting, actually, of my morning that I wasn't expecting.
Well,
And
sure. Yeah.
I'm just really happy to be able to talk about what's on my mind on this show. And it's something that you don't spend a lot of time thinking about. But I just would encourage everyone who's listening to take advantage of opportunities to be with people and to talk with people and send your messages out and let them know that you connect with them and they matter to you, because you don't get an email the day before something like this happens that says like, hey, make sure you reach out to this person while you can, ha ha ha. So since the universe doesn't send those messages, it's on us to remember to do that while we can.
Hmm.
And while we're trying to get back into SWTOR news, chill, who do we have with us today in the chat room?
All right. Well, let's see. We just got the stream going, so we're still a little light on people, but that's all right. I know Sadek is here. Insar, Nor, Siskaika, Squishy Twitchy, Duck Sauce also shows up here. Hey everyone, how's it going? Let's see. And also, Doc, this is now the 1 year anniversary of you being on the show, so congratulations.
Yes.
Yeah, that's very cool. So it's gone very fast. If someone had, in fact, the other day when we found out that, yeah, or when you mentioned that it was coming up, I was like, wow, it didn't feel like a year. That felt really fast. So I did a bit of searching as for the first episode you were on. It was episode 338. Well, the first episode you were on as the co-host. So that was
Okay.
July 19th. So we just passed the that one, and then the next one would be like August 2nd or something like that. So,
Right.
so yeah, so this is now the 1 year anniversary. On that episode, we also had Dekion on as a guest. There wasn't a ton of like earth-shaking news that episode. It was sort of a quiet period, but just to let people know like what was going on in the game a year ago. The cartel reputations were being merged into a single reputation called the Underworld Exchange. And if that makes the news, you know that it's really light news.
Epic news right there.
Exactly. And there were a number of bug fixes, and a lot of them revolved around the Rishi Stronghold. So Rishi Stronghold's kind of new at that point, so that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And in general Star Wars news, Comic Con of that year had announced that further episode of Clone Wars would be airing. So there you go.
I was
So
super
yeah,
excited about that announcement too.
yeah, yeah.
I love when old things aren't dead to mock Kylo Ren deliberately.
That's right.
Um, yeah, it's just really great. And you know how far the game has come in terms of what we know as fans and avid players. You know, back then, 6.0 was a rumor,
Hmm.
and we weren't even sure if it was actually ever going to happen. And now we find ourselves just a month, 2 months, 3 months, somewhere in there away from a story expansion with an op and some flashpoints from what they're telling us. And that's just how far we've come as a show, but also the game has allowed us to do that. So thanks to BioWare and Chill, thanks for giving me the opportunity to do the show with you. It's been really fun, and it's crazy to think that we've been doing this for a year.
Of course, yeah, it's been great having you on as a co-host, and Dekian was surprised by this news as well. It's like, wow, it's been a year already. Yeah, it has.
Yeah, well,
So
26 episodes is really easy to get there and not notice.
yeah,
So,
exactly. Yep,
yeah.
absolutely. And Marcus from Working Class Nerds is here as well. Hey, Marcus. And yeah, yeah, Dexon. Uh, there was the test server, which we'll be talking about a little bit later in the news. And yeah, so let me go ahead and talk about what I've been up to. So basically, I've been doing sort of the same thing. I've been pushing towards getting all 8 of the base classes to 300 CXP before the start of Onslaught. 2 of my remaining classes are close. I only need 3. The 2 of them are close. The smuggler's only a few levels away in the 290s. And the trooper has like 50 or so to go. But the third one is the marauder and has like over 200 to go. Still in double digits. And he also, that's the one's quite a ways away. And also he hasn't done, so I may use your tip, like, especially if I get like some CXP packs when I'm dinging 300 on these other characters, I'm going to send those over to him. Because that's a long way
Yes.
to go. Um,
If you can get some ops packs or flashpoint packs, especially with the double XP, and watch for that force alignment gain too.
yeah, that's not a bad idea. Yeah, exactly. He hasn't done Coffee Kotet, and I'm deciding whether I want to go through that with him because I've done those chapters a lot. He's on the back half of Kotfi, so there's still quite a few chapters to go. There's the rest of Kotfi and then all of Kotet. Or maybe I just jump forward to Osa's just to get better gear. I don't know. In any case, I'll have to worry about that some more. I'm kind of focused on getting the other 2 to 300 so that I can just focus on that guy at the end. So I also did try out the first phase of the test server. There'll be more about that later. It was pretty exciting to try it. I haven't been on the test server for quite some time. It's been like a couple of expansions, I think, since I've done any testing. But it felt really interesting to do. It was cool seeing the new tactical item slot and putting different ones in there, and trying to figure out what would be the best one for this character and that sort of thing. And yeah, let's see. Oh, and we've got a little bit of news from Marcus of Working Class Nerds. Matt P. and Musco will be on Working Class Nerds on August 8th, and they're going to discuss operations and Dexon, so that's pretty cool. That's going to be that. I'm looking forward to hearing from Working Class Nerds on that. That's going to be really good. But yeah, so I was on the test server. I am planning. I'll try to get on the other ones as well. There was just going to be 2 phases, like a phase 1 and a phase 2, but now there's going to be like a middle one that they're calling phase 1.5. And so they're adding some more stuff in there, which is good. It's all fine. This 1.5 should be up pretty soon. It sounds like they haven't exactly been they haven't given exact times as far as I can tell, but they keep saying that it's coming up very soon, and yeah, so it was. That'll actually bring us to the tip of the week. I'll go ahead and do that because,
Awesome.
yeah. So we were a little dry on tips of the week, so I just kind of get ahead and made one up myself. Being on the test server kind of was a good sort of reminder to me because the game is very well set up in terms of if you have your key bindings on one character, you can save them. When you make a new character, you can then import them. It's very quick and easy. The same with the UIs. You can set your UI up in certain ways. You can then save it any way you like. You can have multiple savings if you want. And going on the test server and having basically none of these set up properly kind of reminded me of like what is really good to have set up properly in the game. First of all, get rocket boost if you can. It wasn't really available on the test server because it just wasn't available.
Well, don't you have to have credits or cartel coins?
You have to have either
that?
credits or cartel coins, but in my case, though, you have to have a legacy. And for whatever reason, there was like a weird bug where it asked me to create a legacy, but then when I tried to, it said you can't create a legacy at this time. So I don't know if it was bugged or if the test account wasn't set up to create a legacy, or if you have to, or if it wasn't advanced enough to get certain legacy things unlocked. I don't know what the problem was, but I couldn't get a legacy, so I couldn't get rocket boost.
Right.
But as soon as you have legacy, look towards making rocket boost your first unlock. It's absolutely the best single unlock in the game.
Yeah, it definitely is. And then mount while running is second.
Mount while running is very nice, I'll admit, but it pales compared to rocket boost. It absolutely pales. Also, take advantage of those action bars. So I actually had trouble setting mine up to be exactly like it was on the live server. I think I had some of the keybinds that are just kind of muscle memory now. I think I messed them up when I was trying to set them up on the bars, and it really screwed me up. So get those action bars set up with keybinds. Use the Shift Alt Control variations so that you can use more than one bar without having to click manually on the bars to do actions that way. And then when you set up your UI, take advantage of the fact that you can resize them, you can reposition them. What works for me is that because the character is always your own character is like just below like midpoint on the screen. I like to put the self and the target bars just below my character, and then the information that's related to those two characters I put around there. So buffs, debuffs, cast bars, stuff like that. And then right below that is all my action bars, pretty much. Well, all the important ones anyway. And I just have them stacked right tightly on top of each other. It tends to be, it's close to the middle of the screen where where all the action's happening, and yet because it's like, in terms of 3D space, it's like just below it's just kind of just behind your character, so it's not used a lot in terms of like needing to know that information, for where enemies are and stuff like that. So I find that works the best. Just stack them right there, and then I usually put party and operation frames like off to the side, but not too far away. And then other stuff you just kind of shove right off to the edges. So mission information that goes way off to the right, and the Warzone scoreboards I just keep way up at the top, pretty much where they usually are anyway. Stuff like that. Save it. I personally like to have like every character have pretty much the same UI. Other people like to have different ones based on, say, whether they're healing or whether they're doing damage or whether they're tanking, or just a different one for every character. But for me, I like to have I like to have that muscle memory of knowing exactly where everything is. So basically I use the same UI all the time. So there you go. Yeah, exactly. Duck Sauce did the same thing. He took a long time making his UI.
Well, I do something similar where my interrupt is in the same spot for every tune.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever my two moves that proc or buff different offensive moves are in the same spot.
Yes.
Cooldowns are in the same spot.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, analogous between
absolutely
the different
yes.
classes. So
right, because everyone has an interrupt.
Right.
That's always on the same one. The CC breaker is on one for me as well. I do the same thing. Yeah, and that's a very smart. That's a good point. That's related to all this. Yeah, I do that same thing. I have
dots.
I have offensive
cooldowns. In the
cooldowns.
same spot.
Yep.
Yeah.
Offensive cooldowns are always in one set. defensive ones are in another set. I'm kind of pointing on screen where I put them.
Right. So if you're
Not
listening
that
to
it
the
means
podcast,
anything in this context.
we are both in a hilarious way pointing at our screen as if you can see what we're talking
Right.
about.
Or is it, yeah, or if it made a lick of difference.
Right. So you're welcome, podcast listeners.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's like the single character stun, which I think every class has, is always on one button, and then like control one for me is always like a movement ability, stuff like that, like force speed or whatever.
This tip, Jill, I don't know if you meant to do this, but it's a tip of a tip of a tip. So you clearly are the winner of tip of the week.
There we go. Yeah.
You get no ultimate pack at all because you don't need those.
Right, exactly. It's not a lot of point in me sending it to myself.
No.
All right, but if you'd like a chance to win a Tonfon or M83R Droid pet code courtesy of BioWare and an OotiniCast provided Cartel Market pack from the latest shipment, please send your tips to OotiniCast@gmail.com before the next show. And let's see. Now there's not going to be a Jedi Mind Trap this week. Is that correct, Doc?
That's correct. The mind trap that I'm creating is a 3-hour one for people tomorrow. And that does not involve this podcast. But if anyone's interested in me following up next episode, just let us know somehow on Twitter. My concepts I'm talking about are loot boxes like usual, but there have been some video games that have been that have made the news with doing some very interesting and creative things relating to helping their players get that gambling sensation. And I'm not actually talking about the nightlife event because that's not with real money. There are actually so I'm talking about all of that, about video games as something that can be very good for people if used the right way and enjoyed the right way, and very bad for people if not. So because of that, I did not put a mind trap because I'm at the podium tomorrow, so that takes time to develop.
Okay.
Yep. But we can go to the holofeed.
All right. Yeah, that'll bring us to the holofeed. And just as a first little mini bit, the double XP and double CXP is live, as it has been for a little while now, and it will go until August 20th. So take advantage of that. That's still, some time before Onslaught actually starts, so take advantage of it now. It's pretty rare for them to have double CXP go on more than like a week or so. So having it go basically almost a month is pretty exciting, and it gives all sorts of opportunities. So definitely take advantage of that. First round of Onslaught Test Server, PTS. Now, they wanted the sorcerers, the Inquisitors, and they wanted the Inquisitors and the Warriors basically to be tested. So that was pretty much the only characters you could actually do in this first round. I actually did an Assassin just because I had been playing an Assassin a fair bit recently, and I wanted to make sure that it was a class that that I was familiar enough with that I would understand what the differences were and so on. Basically, when you went on, they had actually usually, or in the past, you could actually copy one of your current characters over to the PTS, but that's not what they wanted to do this time because they wanted to test just a few classes. There was no character copy. Instead, you just made a character, and then when you go there at level 1, instead of like starting your class story, you just go through that area to like right where the first mailbox and whatever is, and there's a little console you click on. It basically levels you up to 75, gives you 10 million credits, gives you your ship and your class ship droid as a companion, so you have one companion, and then it just dumps you out on Odessin, and basically everyone was pretty much there most of the time. There were some training dummies there. There were vendors who would sell you pretty much everything you could want in terms of this. So there was a vendor who sold nothing but the new tactical items. There was a vendor who did the armor sets with the set bonuses on them, and then they were empty. But then you could buy armorings and mods and all that. from a different vendor. So yeah, I just bought like basically all the armor sets. In fact, it turns out there's like a little achievement for owning all of the sets. So that I mean, it's only on the test server, but it was a pretty kind of amusingly easy way to get a bunch of the of achievement points. Achievement points. So that, I guess when Onslaught comes, there's a little hint. There's a way to get some achievement points if that's what you're looking for. But yeah, and it was interesting because you could see how it had, like, some of them were like tending towards the bigger bonuses were the 4 and 6s, and then there's some sort of 2 and 4 set bonuses. And so, and then I just took a look at all of them. It's like, okay, for the spec I like, what bonuses do I want to have, and what I'm going to do, that sort of thing. Because I was doing an assassin, so I could have done tanking, but that wasn't the spec I was doing. So I did look at the tanking ones, but kind of discarded them after a bit, and just tried them out. The tacticals were sort of the more interesting ones for me, just because it was a new slot. It kind of, at least right now, it's in the lower right, but not where the other ones are. It's like on the inside, kind of. It's kind of like on your character model, and then it's like right to the right of the leg on your character model, when you bring up your C button.
So it's more in the picture with your character?
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of to the left of like the boots and the leggings,
Okay.
So like that. And and it's just a little slot. You can put it in there and try different ones. I tried pretty much. I mean, I bought all the ones that were available because they make it super cheap, so that you can do that. And then I tried to work it out. I mean, I don't think I did a very good job of figuring out like how effective each one was, but it was fun to try. One of the difficulties for me was I decided to just do something that I do a lot of, which is I went to CZ 198 and tried to do the dailies. I was pretty much the only one there, but the problem was that there was a bug on the test server, which they know about, where the aggro radius of the enemies was way too big. So even though I was a stealther, as soon as I pulled someone, the other groups nearby would also get pulled, and I kept dying or being forced to vanish, or my companion would die and I'd have to run away.
That sounds awesome.
It was a little rough. That
makes it like a real video game. Where, like...
Yeah, I was like, if you wanted like old school, like, tough gaming situations, where you could actually die on regular content, that would be the way to do it.
Yeah.
The aggro radius was making it pretty rough.
Because sometimes it's like you wonder what the vision. Our enemies definitely don't have 20/20 vision. It's really easy to get by things that clearly should be able to see you. So
yeah,
that's interesting that the PTS. I would have
right.
So
it took away their cataracts, basically. Gave them cataract surgery, so now they can see too clearly.
Leave it in the game, everyone.
Yeah, it was pretty rough. It was interesting in its own right, but I was having trouble sort of getting a real hang of it, and really deciding like, okay, how much is this doing for me, that sort of thing. There was the new ability. In the case of assassins, it didn't feel all that exciting. It's on like a 12-second cooldown, and it does a little AoE in front of you, and it has kind of a little sweepy effect, visual effect, and does a bit of a slow as well as some damage. It's just not that exciting. So it didn't really change my rotation at all. So that at least made it simpler, because I could, I didn't have to worry, was I mucking up my rotation, or, was I not taking into consideration the new rotation, stuff like that.
So that's for Severing Slash?
Yeah, whatever it's called, yeah.
Because I'm looking at the new moves for the Sorcerer, and it feels like Volt Rush is going to change everything I'm trying to do. So right. I didn't do the PTS this time around, but I'm really interested in what that will do to the rotation.
Right. Well, they said in this next phase that although they're going to add a couple of classes, and we'll go over We'll go over what's going to be on the PTS for them, the new abilities and tacticals and so on. But apparently, Sorcerer and Assassin and these other ones that, the warriors that were available are going to still be available in this next phase as well. So you can actually do that if you wish.
Okay. Also, if you need your UI, I'm not going to cover exactly what folder that is right here, but you can actually um, save that file into a folder that you can find very easily. And as long as you're not making changes to it every time you play, and it is the same, you can probably just drag that file into your PTS folder
Yeah, that might be a
and
good way to go.
save you a ton of time.
Right, especially if I don't know if they're going to wipe it or not. I don't know. And I know
Yeah.
that for 1.5 they said they're not going to wipe the characters, so presumably the UIs wouldn't be wiped as well. But I don't know if when they wipe the characters, if like other stuff like the UIs get wiped as well. If that happens, though, it would be a nice way to quickly get it
Yeah.
on the PTS, because it did take a little while to get it all set up. All right, so let's see. They did a little recap shortly after our last show. It was basically a little stream where they kind of recapped the stuff that was on the Cantina. So that way, if you weren't at the Cantina or didn't, or wanted just to hear it straight from their mouth, uh, it would kind of go over it. Basically, everything we kind of knew about. So it's not really a whole lot to go over. It was kind of cool to see like the picture of Arn, Tawader's new Padawan, and some of the other pictures of the armor, which is kind of Roman, and some of which is like Roman inspired. Stuff like that. A couple of pictures of the new areas and stuff like that. So that was pretty cool. If it's available still on their stream, and I'm pretty sure it would be on YouTube as well, maybe by now. Or if not, just go to twitch.tv/SWTOR and it'll be the last video that they did. The free-to-play changes are going to be kind of cool in the expansion. Now, they had some recent updates of free-to-play, which we've gone over pretty extensively, where there's more action bars, and you can now res in place as opposed to having to res back at the med center, and you can also quick travel, so those are all good. But also, in the expansion, you'll also be able to get to level 60 instead of just level 50, and in addition to the class stories, you'll also have access to Rise of the Hutt Cartel and Shadow of Revan. So there we go. So let's see. We've kind of gone over like what I saw on the test server already, so we can kind of go past that. We're going to get up to the operative and the sniper abilities here in a little bit. But before that, congratulations to Kid Lee for being highlighted by SWTOR for their content creator program. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, they're starting to they keep rolling out that, which is awesome. Kid Lee's been doing a lot of good work, and so it's really good to see Kid Lee get a moment there. Let's see, and then on the test server, but actually on the live servers, there was a small patch implemented July 25th. A number of mostly minor bug fixes, not too much to be excited about, but it's always nice to have bug fixes. When it did launch, it actually bugged the guild heraldry in the game, so they worked on that right away. They had to like patch it and temporarily take everything offline for like 15-20. I think it was less than an hour for sure. I think it was more like half an hour. And after they patched it, if anyone had logged in, guild heraldry would be impacted, and so they gave 1 million credits into the guild bank to allow the guild to reset their heraldry. And if no one had logged in during the short time that the bug had been in the game, then the guild would not be impacted at all. They didn't give them any credits, but also their heraldry wasn't messed up, so it's all good. Let's just go ahead and get on to the test server changes. We're going to start with the operatives. The operative has the new ability Tactical Overdrive. It increases mastery by 15% for 12 seconds, which is quite a bit actually, it feels like anyway. In addition, it resets the cooldown of Stim Boost, Recuperative Nanotech, Volatile Substance, and Lethal Strike with a 3-minute cooldown. So, this is, I think this is actually an ability that's been in the game before. Maybe maybe they took it out or it just wasn't available on this class. Maybe it's only on snipers or something. But the idea of having a cooldown that resets other long cooldowns is potentially very powerful, because you can sort of like burn all your cooldowns, click it, and then they're all available again to either to use immediately or just whenever you need to, in a short time, as opposed to having to wait them all out. Increasing mastery by 15% for 12 seconds sounds pretty darn good as well. And the nice thing is, like, even if you haven't burned your cooldowns, you can even if you forget to or whatever, you're still getting a mastery increase of 15%, which is pretty solid. Let's see. Set bonuses. Now, I've been playing some. Unfortunately, it's been on the Republic side, so I might be messing up like the abilities in my head of like what their names are versus the Empire side. But
I'm pretty much no help to you, Chill. I don't play operative.
Right. Okay, so the set bonuses: Noxious Cloud, activating Noxious Knives, which is the little AoE ability, reduces the cooldown of Toxic Haze by 3 seconds. Every enemy affected by Toxic Haze takes 20% more damage from Noxious Knives. So they sort of affect each other. I kind of like this one. I've actually been, the one character that I've been doing on the Republic side is the Ruffian, which is the dot spec. On that spec, I don't know if I feel like I need this extra AoE damage, because this is a lot of extra just AoE, basically. So you're getting a Toxic Haze cooldown reduction, which is nice. I do use it a lot. And then if they're affected by Toxic Haze and you do the Noxious Knives, they take a little bit more damage. It's okay, but I feel like at least in that spec I do enough AoE damage anyway that I don't think it's necessary. But maybe this would be like a nice set to have if maybe you like to keep it in healing spec, but you want to do a bit more AoE damage just so you can do some dailies and not have to deal with not having enough damage and that sort of thing, being able to get through things a little bit faster.
I'm sure there's instances in different content too where you need a cluster of 4 or 5 things to die much quicker.
Mm-hmm.
So this would be very helpful, because do this move first, and that sets you up to potentially save 3 seconds, and that can be the difference sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, next one is Debilitator. Debilitate gets 2 ability charges. I'm trying to remember what one that is on the Republic side.
I know what a defibrillator is.
Right. So is that this? It might be this slow. I can't remember. But anyway, anytime you get a second ability charge, it's kind of cool, and it really affects, like, whenever you go from one and it just has a regular cooldown to having 2 charges, and then you can either use them right away, or if you use one, you can use one anytime, but it'll fill up almost till it's full again.
It's the hard stun.
It's pretty cool.
Intisar just let me know. He corrected my foolishness.
It's the hard stun? Okay.
It's the hard stun.
Okay, so it's the groin kick if you're a Republic guy.
Yeah.
It's dirty kick, so I think it's called.
You can kick 2 groins.
Yeah, that's right. No groin will be safe.
Oh man,
that'll be awesome.
Do we title our episode? No, don't title our episode this.
So yeah, no groin will be safe on the Republic side. That actually sounds pretty powerful, especially since there is a utility in the game that actually lets you reduce the cooldown of it as well. So if you're having 2 charges of it and the cooldown is shorter than than the normal cooldown, that's a lot of stunning. That's pretty good.
Also for PvP, the operative can stealth, so this is potentially really mean.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure people are going to very quickly find usefulness for this debilitator.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's one of the classic like DPS stealther moves is you stun them, you vanish, you get behind them, you use all your openers again. This is after you've already done that once, and then you keep going, and then now you potentially have another stun. So it could be really hard to get going against them in PvP. Healing Haze. Toxic Haze heals any allies standing inside it by a small amount. That sounds, potentially good. Obviously, I think, Operation Healers are going to probably be looking into this one hard, because anything you can do to make yourself more efficient healing wise is going to be good. And I don't think that healers usually use Toxic Haze a ton anyway, so it actually gives you basically a new cooldown that maybe you weren't using a whole lot before. This also reminds me of, like, there's certain other utilities in the game. There's that one where the Jedi knockback ability in a cone, knocks enemies back in a cone. Well,
Right.
it makes that a heal for friends who are in that cone.
Yeah,
This
for
is
the
the
Sith
same
side,
idea.
that's overload.
Overload, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
So this is like the version of Overload, where instead of just being a damage ability, now it's a damage plus a healing ability. I do
And
like
it
that.
knocks all of the ads outside of the orbital strike, so everyone on your team hates you.
Right. Well, Toxic Haze won't do that, so it's even better, right?
But you healed them 5 health points.
Yeah. And then Tactician. Tactical Advantage gets an additional stack. Having a Tactical Advantage increases your damage and healing by 1%. Now, Tactical Advantage is the thing where there's certain abilities that can only be used when you have a Tactical Advantage, or it's upper hand on the Republic side. This one I actually do know about. And normally you have 2. So this is doing 2 things. It's giving you up to 3 stacks instead of just up to 2 stacks. So that's already pretty useful.
Yep.
Because
that keeps the operative stuff going.
Yeah, exactly. And in the case of the spec that I use a lot, which is the dot spec, a lot of times I'm at two stacks. Like, I use my opener, and maybe I already have a stack already, and then it's like, well, there's one more ability that puts another stack on them, and it makes my next ability hit harder. So I want to use it, but if I'm already at 2 stacks, I'm kind of wasting a tactical advantage or an upper hand, because I'm already at my max. And so sometimes I'm juggling in my head, okay, do I put this additional ability on him, or do I go ahead and use up one of the tactical advantages so I'm not wasting one, essentially. And this will make it so that will happen less, because you won't be maxed out nearly as much. Also, I noticed that having a tactical advantage increases your damage and healing by 1%. That's something that used to be in the game. I think it used to be like an old utility from the old utility trees that you could take. I don't remember exactly where it was, but that was definitely a thing back in the day, and they're bringing it back. So pretty cool. Now, if you do it that way, you're also going to be juggling it so that you hold on to your tactical advantages as long as possible. So there might be certain specs where, holding on to those tactical advantages as opposed to using them down all the time, that extra bit of damage and healing might be good. Maybe that's more of a healing thing. I don't know.
Well, since they brought Malgus back,
Yeah.
I'm not surprised if anything comes back at this point, including skill tree concepts.
That's right. All right. Well, the tactical items for them. The new item slot, you can only use one at a time. The general operative ones. Tactical Mastery. Tactical Overdrive gives you a tactical advantage. I'm trying to remember. Okay, Tactical Overdrive. So that's the 3-minute cooldown. So if you use that 3-minute cooldown, it also now gives you a tactical advantage. That sounds good, although it's based on an ability that has a 3-minute cooldown, so you're not going to get it a whole lot, but still, tactical advantages are quite powerful in that spec, in any of those specs, actually. Combat Medic. Resuscitation Probe becomes instant cast, and Culto Infusion can be cast while moving. That's pretty cool, because a lot of times in an operation, you're desperately trying to do Resuscitation Probe on someone, and you get interrupted. The boss does a knockback or a stun or whatever, Yeah. It happens quite a bit. Instant cast means no more interruption. That's pretty sweet. Culto Infusion can be cast while moving. I can't remember how important that one is for the healing spec, but as far as I'm concerned, whenever I can make an ability either instant cast or make it done while moving, I like to do that, because it greatly increases the amount of options you have while you're fighting. Yeah. So that's pretty cool.
A lot of the game kind of expects you to not just stand in one place, and there is a strategy and a skill to being able to pull those moves off in the midst of a battle that requires movement.
Right.
And that's part of the MMO game style. But when the challenges increase the requirement for mobility and the move sets do not, it becomes really disappointing to play. I don't think disappointing is the right word. Really, it increased the challenge in a way that psychologically doesn't feel like the right kind of challenge.
Right.
So you need to get that nice balance of how mobile are my players and how mobile do you need to be to win this fight.
Yeah.
And so that's a game development thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And clearly this one's, obviously meant for the healing spec, even though they put it under, they put these under the general ones, but clearly this is, for the healing spec. And it'll be that we'll look at the ones later on that specifically for that spec, but I'm sure that the healers will also look at this one, and presumably they'll at least keep one in their in their inventory to swap out for when it's really important. Leeching Shiv is another operative tactical item. Half of Shiv's damage heals you. Pretty cool. Basically turns there's other damaging single target attacks in the game that heal you when you hit them. This just turns Shiv into one of those. And then Hollow Screen, Hollow Traverse gains an additional charge. That sounds potentially very useful, like in PvP, just because Hollow Traverse is a lot of mobility, basically. So I can see that being very useful. For the concealment spec, so this is this would be like the backstabby spec, so to speak. Volatile Burst. When volatile substance triggers, it deals damage to all enemies around the primary target and spreads the effects. That's pretty cool. Prepared Strike. Veiled Strike automatically critically hits targets affected by your unexploded volatile burst and triggers it immediately. Okay. That sounds actually pretty nasty. And Acid Lash. Laceration damage triggers acid blade damage and refreshes its duration. Yeah, I don't know enough about that spec to say which one of those would be the strongest, but especially that second one, where Veiled Strike automatically crits targets affected by the unexploded volatile burst, that actually sounds really good. So, and triggers it immediately. That actually sounds pretty nasty. Kind of single, more single target, whereas like the volatile substance one, the volatile burst, turns an ability into an AoE, which is kind of cool. So that seems to be like a theme of some of the abilities that they're doing, is they're taking an ability that does only one thing and they're making it so that it does that original thing plus something else. So they're taking either a single target and turning it into an AoE, or they're taking a single target and making it also a heal, or they're taking a single target and also making it a slow, stuff like that. That's definitely something they like to do.
Chill, we're going to edit this because housekeeping came, like we talked about pre-show.
Yep. Okay, so everyone take 5 or take 2 or whatever while Doc's housekeeping takes care of his room. Yeah, he was saying before that normally he would just put the please do not disturb sign out, but unfortunately he actually needs things refilled and stuff like that. So so he actually needs to take this moment. So we're gonna just hum the Jeopardy theme to ourselves, the Jeopardy in-game theme to ourselves or something.
So, but I already told them that you were going to come because I saw you down the hallway. So don't worry. You're letting her know she's internet famous now? Is that what's going on? Oh, right. You're internet famous now too. Okay, so let's keep going, Chill.
All right, let's see. So going on to lethality, this is the dot spec, so hopefully this will be more recognizable to me. Lethal Haze. Toxic Haze spreads Toxic Blast's effect, and Lethal Strike does additional damage to all nearby targets affected by Toxic Haze. Okay. So turns Lethal Strike into an AoE, which is kind of cool. At least if they're inside the toxic haze. Also, toxic haze spreads toxic blasts effect. I think that's the one that's like you need that. It's like that last thing you apply before you start blasting with your main nuke. I'm trying to remember if that's the version on the Republic side. I think that's right though, which is kind of cool because it is normally something you have to reapply with every single target if you're going to use it. Instead, you now have a way to spread that effect.
Yeah.
And it also,
anytime you can spread to other enemies or hit more
I
than
love
the
that.
one enemy,
Yeah,
that's
especially
really useful.
Yeah, I love that, especially on dot specs like this. So that's pretty cool. And Toxic Blast is the it's important enough that it already has a mechanic in the game where if someone dies with that effect on it, it immediately gives you the cooldown back so that you can use it again, because it expects you to use it on pretty much every target. So this is another just a better way to spread it to other targets. That's one, and I would definitely consider that one. Poison Overload. Toxic Blast finishes all your poison effects on the target and deals their remaining damage immediately. Oh wait, is Toxic Blast the main nuke? Toxic Blast finishes all your... Oh, okay. Toxic Blast cooldown is extended by 9 seconds. Interesting. Wow, okay. So I guess Toxic Blast maybe isn't the that one I was thinking of, but it's actually the main nuke. So spreads the Toxic Blast effect and lethal strike.
I do not play this class.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to. I'll have to think about that one.
We need to recruit specialists for all classes.
Yeah, exactly.
Chill.
Toxic Blast cooldown is extended by 9 seconds. So that's interesting because if it's the one I'm thinking of, the Toxic Blast doesn't have a cooldown, so it goes from 0 cooldown to 9 seconds. But dealing the remaining damage immediately is pretty cool, actually. Huh. All right. Anyway, and the third one, Corrosive Shots. Toxic Blast does 50% more damage. All right. Well, it's already a pretty damaging ability, so that's pretty cool. Although, actually, a lot of its damage comes from the fact that it forces the dots to proc. So the base damage is not that high. So 50% sounds huge, but in this case, it's nice, but it's not going to be as huge as it would be if it was like 50% of the main damage of like a non-dot spec, that sort of thing. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. So I would definitely be interested in playing around with that. And then the healing one, the medicine, Regenerating Waves. Kolto Waves consumes a tactical advantage and heals 20% more per tick. Interesting. So we have more uses for tactical advantage.
That can get your group filled back up a lot faster too.
Right. But that's with the but that it also means you don't really have a choice, though. I mean, once you put in this, once you put it in the slot, the tactical slot, it's going to take the tactical advantage. Is it going to make it so that it also requires a tactical advantage? Like you won't be able to cast it at all unless there's a tactical advantage to consume, or if you don't have tactical advantage, will it simply cast the normal version of Kolto Waves? I don't know.
I don't know. The way that it's written, you could conclude either way.
Right.
And that's actually kind of bad. If you pretty much need to be managing the tactical advantages on healing spec operative anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea that you're blocking a move when you don't have one, when it's a move that hasn't been that way, that could mess with the flow of people's healing.
Right.
So you gotta, but then again, if you get 7 teammates who are getting 1,000 health back, and that 1,000 for each of them becomes 1,200, then just to use simple numbers, that could be a big deal.
Yeah.
So maybe people would still choose it.
Right, and it depends on how often people have. Tactical advantages. Like, are they usually just sitting on 2 most of the time, or now it would potentially be 3 if they had that
3
as a set bonus? Oh, that's right. That 3 for that spec anyway, so it could be 4. Are they often sitting on 2, 3, 4? 2, 3, 4 tactical advantages? Well, if so, then it probably isn't so big a deal. But if they're often using it and they're often sitting at 0 or 1, then that's a different thing. I just don't know enough about this particular spec to say, but it's potentially very powerful. It's sort of like another interesting one. It's like it makes you think like, oh, okay, this could change how the rotation of the whole thing goes, which is pretty cool. Critical surgical probe will always critically hits on targets below 35% health.
Yep, that's useful.
That's
a good
very nice. Yeah.
save a teammate fast kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. Basically, yeah. Anytime you get a much bigger heal, and it's guaranteed, even if they do have to be below 35% health, that's still really good. And of course, that's exactly when you need the big heal anyway. Tactical probe. Activating surgical probe reduces the cast time of the next Colto injection by quarter second, and at 3 stacks, Colto injection can be cast instantly. That's another one that
useful too.
Yeah, that's another one that could potentially change the entire spec and how it plays. That's pretty cool. Yeah. And of course, as they always say, if you're a Scoundrel player, you can expect to see the set bonuses mirrored for you as well. And they did mention one of the things, I think it was on the live stream they did. They basically said, well, why don't we just go ahead and do the mirror version as well? And basically they said, well, unfortunately, as simple as it seems and kind of is, it's still a non-zero work amount to get those swapped over, and then you also have to get everything set up so that people can play on the other side as well on the test server. So that's why they're only doing one side right now. But yeah, basically, but they did all this does is really confirm what we already know, which is that the opposite side is going to have exactly the same abilities available. All right, so some pretty good stuff there. A couple things that stand out to me. I really like some of the ones where you can have an extra tactical advantage. Potentially that's very powerful. The new ability actually seems pretty decent. It's a 3-minute cooldown, but it's a pretty powerful one, giving extra mastery and also resetting other cooldowns. So yeah, some pretty good stuff there. And I noticed that a lot of these tactical items actually do have the potential to change how you play that spec. So pretty cool. Which I think is what they're going for. So this is good stuff.
Yeah. Looks like they've made a lot of moves so that they happen quicker or instantly, and some of the things that are single target now affect multiple targets, and not just in healing numbers or damage numbers, but different effects now ripple across what you're fighting with. So that seems to be the philosophy for this 6.0 update.
All right. Let's see. So now we're going to go on to the sniper.
I'm even less help with the sniper, chill.
Yeah, it's been a while since I did Gunslinger Sniper, but we can figure it out.
Well, I feel like I could help with Gunslinger, but I don't know the names of anything on the sniper side.
Right. The new ability, Hollow Locate. Activating the ability marks your current location for 10 minutes. When this ability is activated again, if you're within 60 meters, you instantly return to the marked location. Hollow Locate goes on cooldown for 120 seconds when used to return to the marked location. Well, that sounds very familiar.
Don't we? Phase Walk.
That's exactly like Phase
Walk.
Walk.
It's so great that snipers got Phase Walk before assassins did. How does that feel?
I think this is actually a pretty clever one, because like the problem with I say the problem, but the thing about gunslingers is you do have to turret a certain amount. Some of the specs are a little more mobile than the others, but they all sort of require you to sit down in your stance and deal damage, and that leaves you, especially in PvP, that leaves you very vulnerable. So having another way to get out of that situation very quickly and potentially very completely, if you put it around a corner, that sounds very, very, very nice, actually.
And the aesthetic of this version of the move makes me feel like it's very Star Trek like.
Yeah, that's the teleporting thing.
Yeah, the teleporting, and I think that matches a class that doesn't use the Force and runs around and shoots things. So I just and with a military sensibility.
Right. It does feel like, yeah, something that only the military would have access to.
Right. And then if you're like,
Although
well, what
they're
about scoundrels?
scoundrels. Yeah.
So it's like, well, all they do is use
Steal it.
crappy rundown versions of the military technology.
Right. Or stolen versions.
Yeah, stolen versions. So for me, the lore behind this move feels really good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, I'm glad
Yeah,
glad more,
exactly.
that makes them, for those people who don't have Datacron Master 2, it adds a whole other class that gets to have that extra attempt at the platforming kinds of challenges. So,
Right, because yeah, I mean, if you're a gunslinger, I mean, if you've ever tried it in PvP, it gets pretty rough sometimes because you can knock them back. Some of them have ways to be invulnerable to that, or ways to quickly get back to you. No, even if you do knock them back, you can sit in your crouch and put on the anti CC buffer so that you can't get CC'd, but you can still get burned down pretty hard. And you have to sit there if you're going to do damage because a lot of your important abilities, need you to be in cover. So, it kind of leaves you in a rough situation, especially in PvP. And yeah, this will be a pretty cool way to kind of get around that. Only once every 120 seconds though, so it's not it's not overpowered. But I think gunslingers will be very happy, especially the ones who are interested in PvP at all. All right, set bonuses. And then these are going to be mostly the 4 6-piece set bonuses. There are going to be smaller bonuses that will be more passive in nature, like stat benefits. All right. Active reload. Killing an enemy within 3 seconds of damaging them down with takedown, which is their executability. They have to be below 30% health. Killing an enemy within 3 seconds of damaging them with takedown resets the cooldown of takedown and gives you a 5% damage buff. This stacks up to 3 times and lasts 10 seconds. Potentially very powerful, especially since there are ways, in certain specs at least, to proc takedown when they're not, below 30% health. So that's potentially very good. Laser focus. Lays targets, gets 3 charges, and its cooldown is reduced by 15 seconds. That's a lays target.
That's a good chunk of time to reduce something.
Yeah, because it's sort of a medium long cooldown anyway. I think it's like a 1 minute cooldown or something like that. So getting an extra charge is pretty good, and reducing the cooldown by 15 seconds is quite a bit. So yeah, I mean, it might be more than a minute, but it's not. I don't think it's much longer than that. In any case, that sounds potentially very good. Entrenched offense. While entrenched, you build stacks of entrenched offense, increasing damage by 1% per stack while you remain entrenched. Stacks up to 5 times. Breaking cover or entrench being removes this. Okay.
That's that's a reward for knowing where to put yourself in the fight.
Right, exactly, and knowing where to do it with where you won't be pushed out of cover.
Yep.
Potentially very good, and so it might be also one of those that, like, an operation person would swap in fights where they know they're not going to have to deal with, like, AOE or whatever, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Reposition. Evasion finishes the cooldown of covered escape and increases you and your allies' movement speed by 50% for 6 seconds. That's kind of cool, actually.
Yeah. There are many mechanics where giving everyone in your group that extra speed is quite useful for avoiding circles and things.
Yeah, I love predation. Yeah, I love predation or transcendence on marauders and sentinels, and so that's really potentially very powerful. And evasion, not a very long cooldown, and there are ways to reduce it as well. So potentially, yeah.
So they're taking some really nice things from other classes and figuring out a way to let sniper participate in that action too. So
yeah,
I think that's a really neat way to update the spec of the class.
Right. And the fact that evasion finishes the cooldown of covered escape means essentially you get to use covered escape twice, since you can covered escape. If they get back on you, you evade, you can covered escape again. Pretty cool. All right, tactical items. The generic or the general sniper ones, not related to one of the 3 particular specs, include hollow defense. Hollow locate increases your melee and range defense by 30% for 10 seconds when you return.
Yeah, that's nice. You don't get to die as quick just by transporting, so that's a good thing to have.
Right. Yeah, especially like if you hololocate and they still manage to find you right away anyway.
Or if you just switch to a different circle,
Yeah,
like that happens all the time.
right. Another group of enemies.
Like if you're in the Tyrants fight or something and you hololocate because one of the fire circles is under you,
Hmm.
but who's to say that the place where you put hololocate earlier in the fight is also clear? So
Right.
yeah.
And 30% for 10 seconds is a pretty solid defense. Suppression. Enemies take 10% more damage while under suppressive fire. Does not affect op bosses. Okay. Is that the AO? Is that the AOE? Is that just the AOE damage?
It feels like it is,
I
yeah.
think it is. Yeah.
So
And
it's
there's also
increasing the damage when you're
right.
spraying the blaster bolts.
Yeah. Well, that sounds decent for certain situations, but whatever.
But again, it's helping you take out those groups of enemies quicker, which is something the operative had with the knives and the gas.
Right. And I think especially like the marksman spec, not so much like the engineering or virulence, those are more AoE, but the marksman spec is kind of single target focused, so maybe having a little more AoE might make them happier. Potentially, anyway. Tech debt. Shatter Shot applies tech debt to its target. Whenever the target is healed, you will also receive a small amount of healing. Ooh, that's kind of cool. That's an interesting ability because, I mean, as a sniper, you don't get a lot of healing normally. In fact, a lot of times I think there's a utility where like you get a small amount of healing as long as you're in cover. It's like 1% of your health every few seconds while you're in cover, something like that. And I often take it just because there's so little healing in the class. So this is kind of cool. Shatter Shot is it's basically, it doesn't do a lot of damage, but I think it's the one that like reduces healing and maybe it slows them as well or something like that. I think it's that ability. So it's also going to mean if they do try to heal them, you'll get some healing yourself, which is kind of cool. Orbital Heal. Orbital Strike heals allies in the area for a small amount whenever it ticks. Well, there you go. Another damage AoE ability that turns into also a heal for friends.
I don't know that the technology for this would work, Chill.
Yeah,
Because
exactly. This is very specific
the
targeting.
strike is selectively killing your enemies and healing
Your
your
friends.
friends. And
Right.
I don't think that's how warfare actually conducts itself.
Yeah, this is pretty much only
Friendly
available.
fire is not a SWTOR thing.
That's right. Yeah, this is the sort of thing that only works in games. All right, marksman spec. There's a few of these. There's they've pretty much made it so there's 3 for every spec. I've noticed that seems to be normal for all the specs. Marksman, scatter shot, penetrating blast does splash damage to targets around the primary target and causes your next follow through to deal splash damage. Well, there you go. That's basically it's like your main nuke, and your follow up is that little extra damage.
Enemies now. Yep.
And now there's splash damage, yeah. So like I was saying about that other one, where marksman might like it for AoE, well, this is another way to add AoE. Probably a better one, it sounds like to me, but maybe not. Depends on the numbers. It depends on a lot. Sniper's Ambush. Activating covered escape or returning to your marker with hololocate makes your next ambush activate instantly and deal 20% more damage. An ambush does a lot of damage in this spec.
And that's why you put down hololocate early in the fight, because that's going to become part of your rotation.
Right. Returning to your marker, boom, instant ambush, 20% more damage. Yep. Corrosive follow-through. Corrosive Dart, which is the dot, which is not terribly important in the spec usually, so it'll be interesting to see what this does. Corrosive Dart deals more damage, and follow-through refreshes its bleed effect on any target it damages. So gives you a way to keep dots going. That sounds like very much like an operation, long fight, need to keep all the damage up as long as we can, sort of thing.
Sustained damage.
Yeah, because Corrosive Dart is kind of useful even in this spec, just because it does a reasonable amount of damage over its time. But now, if you just put it up once, as long as you're following through every once in a while, it's going to refresh it. So pretty good. Not too powerful, I wouldn't say, but kind of useful for certain operation bosses and stuff like that. Definitely not a PvP one, for sure. Engineering, blasting caps. Cluster bombs deal damage to all enemies around their target. Okay, cool. Let's see. So basically another one that turns a single target into AoE one.
Yep.
Explosive trigger. Explosive probe now only triggers from EMP discharge and deals 50% more damage. Okay, so okay. So it's reducing the amount of ways that you have to trigger it, but when you do, it's going to do 50% more damage. That's
Wait,
one of those.
what is the other way that explosive probe detonates?
I believe it. I believe it detonates from any blaster fire, any ability that counts as blaster fire.
Okay, so now
And
it won't do that.
including from allies and stuff too, by the way.
Right. So you have to use the explosive probe, then do the discharge.
Right.
But it does more damage now.
But it does more damage, right?
Okay. Now, is this another thing where if you don't wait, are these set bonuses or tacticals? Chill. These are tactical.
This is a tactical.
So if you use this tactical, does that mean you? It's kind of the same question from the operative. Like, if you use this, does that mean you can't do that move the other way? Like with the healing waves. So.
Well, it sounds like, because they use the word only this time, yeah, so it sounds like it's very specific to EMP discharge. So it just means you have to make sure that you use these in the correct order. Sounds potentially good. It's one of those, it's like until you see the numbers, or if you in this case, if you knew the spec really well, you might be able to tell right away, whether this is worth it or not. Potentially interesting, though. Ruthless interrogation. Series of shots, refreshes interrogation probe, and ticks its damage every time it hits. That's kind of interesting.
I just like the name. Ruthless interrogation.
Right. So basically it takes the dot and series of shots, which is like a semi-short cooldown, and it does damage, I think, like 3-4 times, something like that, and it just forces it to tick damage. It's like a mini version of what the Virulent spec normally does with its main nuke. The main nuke on Virulence is, I forget what it's called, but you put the dots on them, and then when your main nuke goes off on them, you go bop 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 bop, and it forces the dots to tick with every time you bop 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 them. So it's like 3-4 times, and you're doing damage directly, but it also forces the dots to tick, and that's why you pretty much have to have all the dots on them first if you're gonna do that spec. Virulence, which is that spec, so let's go on to that one. Poison Splash. Corrosive grenade spreads weakening blast effect. Interesting. Sounds very PvP-ish, because I don't think you use weakening blast a lot in operations and stuff. Corrosive grenade spreads weakening blast effect. Lethal shot does splash damage to all targets affected by corrosive grenade. So you start with weakening blast, you do corrosive grenade, and then lethal shot does splash damage, because
there you go.
To all targets. I mean, it gives you a whole different, it's like if you take this, it just gives you a whole different way to run the spec, essentially. Poison Choke. Weakening Blast finishes off all your poison effects at once, dealing all the remaining damage. Weakening Blast cooldown is increased by 6 seconds. This is a slightly different version of the operation dot damage one. Again, it's like
all your dots just become one push of damage.
Yes, immediately.
That's interesting.
It is. It's very cool.
It almost turns a dot spec into a burst approach if you do it right.
Right, and then you have to think, okay, am I going to be able to burst them down, or is it going to force me to reapply my dots and do it again? Because then that thing's going to be on cooldown for 6 seconds more than usual. So,
that's really interesting to think about.
Yeah, in this case, I know that Weakening Blast is that one that you add right before you do the main nuke. It's not the main nuke itself. I'm 90% sure. And it has a fairly long cooldown, but it's the one that gets refreshed if the person dies with the effect on it. So it sounds like, if you know that you're going to be able to burst them down with the Weakening Blast, that actually could be a really cool way to do it.
Yeah.
And culling shots. Weakening blast deals 50% more damage. So again, it's not a terribly damaging ability by itself, but it's because it works with the dots and stuff like that. So, okay. Some of these, again, the idea is changing specs up and doing this, making it so that you have different ways that you can do damage, or more ways to do AoE, more ways to do other stuff like that.
Yeah.
The hollow locate is potentially going to be very, very, very nice for this class.
It sounds like they had some really good ideas, and I don't play these a lot, but just doing the leveling with my gunslinger, I can see how a lot of these things will rework the order that you want to do for them, and that's the goal. So it sounds like, or it looks like, they were successful here.
Right. All right. So phase 1.5 of the PTS, Eric did say would be next week. And let's see, when did he write this again? So he wrote that the 26th, 4 days ago. So yeah, it should be sometime this week. So it should be any day now, and that'll be the next little mini part of the PTS. So that should be any time now. There's also one additional question before we finish up the news. Anyone remember when the last rename sale was? And then Eric said, not that this thread was specifically asking, but did want to let you know there's a plan to have a sale on some character stuff like renames and probably also transfers when we get closer to launch. It's still a bit away and I don't have exact timing, but we'll be sure to give you notice a week or so before it goes live. So if you've been waiting, to rename because maybe the name you were hoping for wasn't available and the one that you got, you're tired of or don't like, that'll be available on sale. And also transfers are going to be on sale too. So if you're thinking of doing a transfer, you might want to hold on to the sale. And yeah, that's always been the transfer have been so weird because like right now they're very expensive. When they first started, they were very expensive, and then there was like this long stretch in between, like over a year long, or maybe it was almost 2 years long, when it was like dirt cheap. It was only a few cartel coins.
Yeah, wasn't it 90 cartel coins for a while?
Yeah, it was like really, really
like
cheap.
$1.
Yeah, and now it's it's whatever it is, 1,500 or some much greater amount. So yeah, if we can get it on sale, that would be nice. So
you could argue too that BioWare will make more money out of it being cheaper than they will having it be more expensive, because people will look at it like, oh, it's easy, it's not expensive. So,
yeah, that's a very common thing in like economics, where if the price gets greatly reduced, people, it essentially just opens up whole new ways that people use it. You know what I mean? It's like, right now maybe it's expensive enough that people aren't doing it unless they really want a character on a server, because maybe they have a friend who plays on the other server or whatever. Right. But if it's a lot less expensive, then it becomes a question of, oh well, I heard about this guild that I like, so let's go ahead and transfer a character over so that my my legacy unlocks are all unlocked and stuff like that, where you wouldn't do it maybe if you were if it wasn't if it was at the normal price. So
right.
So yep, that'll be coming out before Onslaught, but they don't know exactly when. And that's the news. Is there anything else you need to talk about this week, Doc?
No, we're good to go, Chill.
All right, then that's the show. If you'd like to play with us in the Ootini Knights Guild on the Republic side of the Satil Shan server, or in our guild on the Empire side, do a /c join Ootini to join the Ootini channel. Then let us know you're a fan of the show. You can email questions and comments about the show to OotiniCast@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter using @OotiniCast. You can find contact details for all of us on our website, OotiniCast.com, which includes how to subscribe to us using iTunes, Stitcher, and the rest. We record the show live bi-weekly on Tuesdays at noon Pacific. Go to OotiniCast.com/live to find out how to join in. Our theme song is Doomsday by Jean-Paul Zogby. And thank you to the chat room, and hope the rest of your trip goes well, Doc.
Thanks, Chill. Talk to you next time.
Alrighty, and we'll see you next show. All right, thanks for coming, everyone. And yeah, we'll be trying that test server again as soon as it comes back up. You guys have a good one, and thanks for coming. And I'm gonna go ahead and stop the stream. There you go, and stop. Let me get to the broadcast. Stopping the broadcast.